allowing me this time. I appreciate, especially in the bubble, especially with what's going on in the tournament, that you give me 20 minutes. I do value your time. I'm working with the National Transformation Initiative, NTI. I don't know if you've seen it. We've been doing a bit of advertising. But the idea, it started last year, pre-COVID, but of course so much more relevant now. But the idea is that it's a sort of an online, it's a site where we have courses that people can take and get upgraded skills and get certificates, etc. Everything for free. But it's really a space where we want to try to encourage a better Barbadian. We're trying to raise another generation that's a little more self-possessed, a little more confident, go-getter. You know, we've come out, we think, I perceive at least, of a generation of people who work for people. We go through school to get a job. Obviously, all of that's changing so fast. The world's changing. And in fact, the Prime Minister does not think Barbados is changing fast enough. So a couple of us are transformation champions. That's a real title. You're talking to a transformation champion. So I feel like they would talk about strategies. I want to tell good stories. I've interviewed Rishi Bajan, did a feature on his agricultural thing, and people who inspire me, and of course Jason, you are a great inspiration, not only to Barbadians but young boys and girls around the world. So I wanted to have this little bit of an intimate, personal chat with you. We've taken away the cricket, we've taken away stock answers to my cricket questions, and just learn a bit more about you, like about your early childhood, for example. Were you always tall?
Yeah, pretty much always tall, as long as I can remember. I was always bigger than my normal age group, and more or less, was towering over everybody within that age group as well too. So parents tall, family's relatively tall as well too, so it's in the genes.
And when you were getting taller as a youngster than your age group, was it awkward for you? How did you cope with it? What did you feel?
To be honest, I've always embraced it, I guess when you're younger, you want to be more or less fitting into the group, and I was always somebody who stood out, and I grew to love it. I wouldn't change any part of it. I'm glad that I am the way I am, and I know I'm the way I am for a reason. So I don't get too caught up with the norm or what's relevant to people, and I just try to focus on what makes me happy. And I love my parents. Wouldn't trade it for the world, and thankful for my parents for bringing me into this world the way I am.
I love your parents. A lot of people love your parents, and that's actually, let's talk about the parents, because the environment in which you grew up is obviously so key to who you are. Pretty relaxed folks, household. Yeah, my mom and dad actually divorced when I was 4 years old. Pretty much spent the weekdays with my dad, and I went to my mom on weekends. But have a really good relationship with them all. My dad later remarried a couple of years after to my stepmom. She's like a mother to me. We've got the utmost respect and understanding as two individuals, and she's done a lot for me personally. Played an integral part in my childhood. So I have a lot to be thankful for. I have been blessed with great people around me. My grandparents as well too have played a pivotal role in my development. My grandfather, before he passed, was one of those people who came out and supported me every single cricket game I played. I've had a pretty stable upbringing. It wasn't a case where you suffered or went through that much hardship in comparison to the many other people. So I consider myself really, really fortunate, to be honest, to have that support system from at home, to have good people around me at school and in the environments that I was always in. And I guess it's developed me into the individual I am today. It's super fortunate, because sometimes when people go through divorce, it's very painful.
Yeah, it could be. You see the reactions of many people who I've been around personally, and different people take to it differently. It's not easy for some people. And I guess it wasn't a volatile situation with my parents. It wasn't abusive. It was very, very smooth. For me and my brother, my older brother, that is, I don't think we had ever asked the question as to where they split or pretty much got into it. It was just a smooth transition, and it wasn't our business in our opinion, so we just moved on with it. And for me, I just want you obviously want your parents to be happy, and their happiness, I guess, breeds our happiness as well too. And I guess they made a decision based on what's best for us and them, and we were able to accept it and move on. I can't thank the Creator enough for my parents, man. I love them so much, and I guess quote unquote daddy's boy. I love my father, man. My father's one of those guys who he instilled the right things in me from very young. You know, he's one of those guys that would say if it's a necessity and he can provide it, he will provide it. Anything else that he doesn't deem a necessity, I gotta work hard for. And for me, those kind of values really sit well with me. And I guess as a youngster, you don't really understand how deep it is. But as you go through life, you understand different things differently. You know, you then accept it for what it is and really understand the message that he was trying to send us, you know, at a very young age. So I'm thankful for him, you know, and he bought me all my cricket gear. He had time because he managed some arcades, so he had more time than my mom. So he was at every single cricket game that I played as a youngster growing up. He even traveled abroad to watch me play cricket, and he was always by my side. He's always been by my side, and I can't thank him enough. You know, my mom now, because I've obviously elevated a little bit more, she's got a little bit more flexibility with her job, so she's been able now to come out a lot more to support me as well too. But I guess my father's one of those guys who flies under the radar, and he's one of those guys who, when it comes to cricket, for instance, like when I played combined school cricket, youth cricket, we would be at Leicester One, that was our home ground. So all the parents would be sat into the pavilion. My dad is one of those guys who would just park over in the parking lot, like reverse his car and just sit in his trunk, just watch cricket from afar, never really get too close to everybody. He's just one of those introverted people, very, very quiet. But you know, he's a serious man as well too. But I guess he could be very, very jovial too. So look, sitting out here talking to my dad I guess it's a bit emotional because his 60th birthday was actually last month, and I wasn't in Barbados to actually celebrate it with him. And I surprised him when I came back home with a gift that I bought for him in England. And just to see how he appreciated it, you know, it was heartwarming for me. But I know for something as special as a 60th birthday, lots of people nowadays don't get there. You can see the same situation with COVID and how many lives it's taken. And now to see him reach that landmark and to see how happy he is of his children, his part in our development, you know, I think it's something worth celebrating. So I made sure I came back home. I was only home for 2 days, so I made sure I put one day for him so we could celebrate it.
It's such a special story, Jason. I think any sports fan anywhere in the world watches sports and dreams of being able to do that in front of their parents, right? Especially the parent who made the sacrifice.
Yeah, it is, man. Again, I could go back to my first 5-wicket haul for Barbados. Was playing for Barbados, and prior to that game, I wasn't having like the best of seasons. It was only like 3 games in. Youngster coming into the Barbados team for the first time, and you know, you want that success. You're also being scrutinized and judged based on your performances. Some people probably felt I shouldn't have been there, and other people felt I should have been there, but knew what I could produce. And it was only a matter of time before he got it right. And I remember prior to that, obviously, he said wasn't getting the wickets that I wanted, wasn't getting the runs as well. And obviously, cricket pundits and other people will criticize and call for your head to be dropped. And you know, Roddy Eswick, who's another guy who's close to me, who would call my, like, quote unquote, my cricket father. He told me, look, don't read the newspapers, don't listen to the news, just blank it all out. So I took that approach because I found myself being sucked into the peripherals. And I went into the game. My father obviously was in the stands, and I remember being on 4 wickets. And I was just thinking of how I'm going to celebrate the 5th one, because I felt as though it was going to come. And got the 5th wicket, and I ran straight to my dad. Put up my hand, saying 5 wickets. Desmond Haynes was the manager at that time. And Desmond Haynes fined me, I think it was like $100 because he said I should celebrate with my teammates first and then, you know, do anything else afterwards. So it was a really touching moment. But yeah, I guess the celebration was worth $100 man. So bless Desi. Hopefully he could sympathize with somebody else after if he goes into that role. But yeah, more or less the occasion was spot on for me, and I'm glad that my father was there to share it with me.
I'm pretty sure you won that money back from Desi on the golf course by now. I don't want to, that's beautiful. Let's just move on really quickly. Just a quick question. It's obvious that you're a pretty middle class guy and had a pretty middle class upbringing. What exposure did you have as a youth growing up, etc., to working class Barbadians, or to other segments, should I say, of Barbados?
To be honest, not much, you know, to be honest. Outside of the norm, which would be when in school we're dealing with normals, school teachers, PE teachers. I was a little bit involved, a little bit more involved in basketball in terms of growing up in extracurricular activities. I did Cub Scouts when I was younger. Actually, Esther Saku was actually my Cub Scout leader back in primary school. And then afterwards, I was again very fortunate. Never had like I had like I think one summer job, and that was basically I think there was a misprint in a I think it was Roberts Manufacturing. They had their normal yearly brochure. I think it was a cookbook, their yearly cookbook, and it was a misprint in it. So they just got us to stick the correct thing over it. So I did that literally for I think a week, and that was as much as I could boast of as a job outside of cricket. So. Again, I've been very fortunate not being able to go into the workforce and having to toil it like how a lot of other people have to. So, look, I sit back. Let's just really reminisce on my life so far. And again, I have nothing to be upset about. I have so many blessings. You know, I'm very appreciative of where I am today, and I understand how it could have been so totally different had I not been successful in cricket. So, it's one thing I wouldn't take for granted.
It's why I've asked you to sit down, because in fact, I'm obsessed with how much sport can change lives and how much sport exposes you to all kinds of different kinds of people. Let's talk really quickly about the cricket. Why do you think they gave you the West Indies captaincy so young?
Alex, to be honest, I sit back here and I wanted the same thing. But I guess people seen something in me that I try to carry myself in a very prestigious way, for lack of a better word. And it's just really because I believe, notwithstanding my physique, I obviously stand out that way. I don't think that's the only way I want to stand out. You know, I don't want people to remember me as Jason Holder, the 6'7" boy from Barbados. You know, I stand out in my stature as it is, but more or less, you know, I think that I've got more substance, I've got more to me than just being a tall, dark fella. You know, and I try to carry myself in a way where I could blend into any environment. You know, I try my best to educate myself as best as I possibly can on various things, various topics around the everyday life. Obviously, there's so much going on in the world, and you need to be abreast of at least most of it, you know, because we are actually quote unquote part of it. And Clive Lloyd was obviously the chairman of selectors there at that time, and I remember the first time I interacted with Clive Lloyd was when it was the opening ceremony for the High Performance Centre in Cayfield. And I saw Clive Lloyd there, and he was just, obviously he's remembered for being one of West Indies' most successful captains, you know, and again, relating to myself, he's a tall figure, you know, kind of big as well. So he's imposing. And when I look at myself and try to emulate myself, I'm trying to match myself up to people of similar stature. Cricket, you know, I like people who are imposing. Freddie Flintoff had a massive impact on the 2005 Ashes. Kevin Peterson, very tall and, you know, imposing as well too. Curtly Ambrose, Courtney Walsh, and these are people who I would just model my game off of. And to relate it back to Clive Lloyd, he stood out in the opening ceremony, you know, and obviously his record as a player, notwithstanding his record as a captain, is superior. So I felt it necessary to have a word with him, you know, and I didn't even know what I wanted to talk to him about. I just wanted to talk to him. So I saw Roddy Essett was there with us at that time, and I told him, I said, well, look, I would like to have a conversation with Clive Lloyd. So he said, that's no problem. He brought him over and he introduced me to Clive Lloyd. And since then, Clive Lloyd has followed my career straight up to now. I would call, like today's birthday, I would call him and say happy birthday to him, or when I'm in England. He does not let me sit in England without checking up on me. So in England, he called me at least 2 or 3 times when I was there. I went up to England in 2018 for rehab. Made sure he called me, invited me out to dinner. And I've spent a lot of time with him. So it's really been good to have someone like that on my side and to support me the way he has. And I guess he saw in me qualities that I could fulfill as a leader. And I guess that's how I became West Indies captain. I mean, at the stage that I became West Indies captain, there was a lot going on around West Indies cricket. You know, we had just came back from India, which is the tour that was called off. I was part of that as well. And there was a lot floating around. And it was a very, very fragile time in West Indies cricket in terms of the political side of things. And more or less, I thought long and hard about it. I had lots of chats with different people who I consider close to me, who I would value their opinion. I also had a chat with Dwayne Bravo, who was the former captain who I took over from. And all these people influenced my decision. And I guess at that stage, I never understood the full dynamics of being a West Indies captain. I thought it was more off on the field stuff. You work on your tactical skills, you work on your management skills in terms of the dressing room. But I never understood it was so much media, then it's selection. And then there's so much back and forth for selection. Then now, as I sit here with you as the captain still in 2020, you get so much of more of a business standpoint of the organization. So like the financial records, the financial status of the organization, and all these things play in decision making. And it's hard work. It's hard work. Maybe if I knew then what it was, I'm not sure if I would have been so inclined to take the job. But I don't regret it, man.
That's a great answer. Jason, I want to ask you what failure has taught you, because cricket is sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and certainly as a captain, like you say, you're really under the spotlight. People love to talk about you. Everyone experiences it, everyone goes through it. Someone like you, I think it's particularly poignant because it's so under the microscope. How do you cope with failure?
Alex, it's a very good question. As a youngster growing up, I took it on. I took it really hard. I would beat myself up. I would get really hard on myself because of failure. But that's because I didn't understand failure. And it's only through experiences, you learn from it. But a lot of people don't understand that failure is part and parcel of sport and life. And again, it took me a long time to really understand it. But now I get to the point where I don't feel as though anything could faze me. I understand I will fail. And because I understand I will fail, to me, I reach another level in terms of the limits that I can go. A lot of people limit themselves because they put a value to something, and I try not to put values in, because T20 cricket, for example, shows you how much the game has really changed. People see some equations, like we just played a couple of days ago, and Karen Pollard came and made 70 off 20 odd balls. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, people would never think it was possible. But that's because we as individuals, we put a limit to a lot of things. And I like the phrase, the sky is the limit. And more or less, I think once you understand failure, then you would be able to get the best out of yourselves. And I've had some tough times in cricket, had some very, very dark days in cricket. And to see how people sometimes just are out to pull you down is amazing. It's amazing. And you sit and you ask yourself as a player, why would people do such? And a lot of them are journalists and pundits who, quote unquote, just looking for a story because that's their job. And for me, it took me a while to just really understand that. And I sympathize with a lot of them. I guess growing up in Barbados, we know of Andrew Mason. And Andrew Mason for me is one of my favorite commentators. I've said that to him, but I felt at one stage in my career that Andrew Mason had a personal vendetta against me. And I guess it was immature of me to think that way, not understanding, but could be a little bit of immaturity on his end as well too. Just trying to really bleed into cricketers and stuff. But when you look at his job, that's his job. He's a cricket analyst, a cricket pundit, cricket commentator. So, I get along really well for him. But for me, I've built the courage and built the self-esteem to deal with issues that are right in front of me. People often say grab the bull by the horns. And I felt it necessary to have a conversation with Andrew. And I did it on a radio program to start it, initiate it. And I felt that was the right medium to do it. And then afterwards, we've had conversations afterwards. I think he's grown a different level of respect for me as well too. And it takes things like that. And again, through experiences, you gain knowledge. And more or less, failure has taught me that. And I'm happy to have failed, because if I hadn't failed, to be honest, I wouldn't understand what great success is.
Courage, self-esteem are two words you mentioned there. I'm a great follower of the Stoics, and they say they pity the man who was not faced misfortune. It's so valuable, it isn't.
Yeah.
I have here haters, ? Comments on social media, ? But maybe you still stick with what you learned earlier, which is not to read the social.
Social media, I'm very deep into, unfortunately. Instagram, I'm an Instagram, what we call it Instagram pimp. I just don't go maliciously on Instagram to create people's profiles, but more or less, like, I follow a lot of celebrities, I follow a lot of news pages, and just, for me, it's a way to keep abreast of what's going on in the world. But having the profiles set up the way they are, people are allowed to comment on your stuff. So I would play a game, for instance, we played a game yesterday, horrible game. But people will find, for instance, a picture I would have posted 2 years ago, just to slide a comment on it and say some very nasty things. There's a point that you really understand and sympathize that there will be those kind of people around. I don't know what pleasure they get out of it, but more or less that's their thing. It doesn't faze me.
How do you keep it from phasing?
Because I understand that they have no impact on my life. They don't feed me, they don't clothe me, they don't support me. So for me to get consumed with them, I feel it's them winning. So more or less, I just try to stay in my lane and do what's necessary. And don't get me wrong, I am only human, and there are times that I feel to respond. There are times I feel to just do a search and find out who they actually are, fly to where they are, and maybe get physical. But more often than not, you gotta just tone yourself down, calm yourself down, and just understand that this is all part and parcel of being a professional athlete.
It sure is. All right, this is my last question. Thank you for a wonderful interview. Well, I have a theory that as the Caribbean is full of culture, but Barbados is less full of culture. And I always ask people like a Jason, who is, the best of British Town Barbados. What do you love about Barbados, and what is it to be Bajan?
Alex, Barbados is home. Is all I know. I've traveled the world. I've been to many places around the world, man. And for me, there's no place that compares to Barbados. And I guess there's a bias, obviously, because I was born there and growing up there, that's the life that I've become accustomed to. But to see how Barbadians are so proud, they're such proud people, because at the end of the day, they hold themselves in high regard. When a Bajan, especially in terms of the Caribbean, a Bajan sees a Bajan as the only thing in the Caribbean. They don't see Jamaicans, sometimes they don't see St. Lucians, Antiguans, they just see Barbados. And I have a part of me which would, I think in terms of competition, you try to really overpower and overshadow your opponents and just playing mind games. And we have had success in sport, particularly cricket over the years. We've had Obadiah Thompson, Ryan Brathwaite, and now we've got people like Rihanna who's come and just changed the world for Barbados. Cigar was back in this day. So just to name a few of the greats that we've had passing through Barbados, and to see how their lives has transpired and coming from just a very, very small place in comparison to the world beaters that are around. There's no reason why I shouldn't be proud of where I come from. Sorry, there's no reason I shouldn't be proud of who I am. There's no reason that I shouldn't be proud to be dubbed living on an island where people dream to vacation. You talk to many people in Europe, you talk to people in Australia, and when you tell them you live in Barbados, it's like, oh my God, I would love to be in your shoes. I wish I could go there, man. I'm longing to go to Barbados. And these are just a few of the things that people would always say. And I just feel that there's so much more for Barbadians to unleash. And we've got some very intelligent and smart people. And during COVID, it's really opened up me to seeing a little bit more small businesses in Barbados. You obviously been hit with the pandemic, and people have now had to come up with their new and creative ways to let their businesses prosper. And I had happened to be a part of a few Instagram lives where it was really ran by some small business entrepreneurs, and to hear their stories, to hear their ideas, the initiatives that they've gone into is amazing. And I said to myself, Barbados has such intelligent people. Barbados has such creative people. And they took a pandemic really to slow me down. Like, this is the first time I've gotten a chance to really sit back and see Barbados. And I had not been to Barbados for that length of time in years. So I had the day in, day out, well, not day in, day out, but they had the normal visits to supermarkets. It opened me up to produce shops, because I would buy all my produce from the supermarket. Whereas I feel it now necessary to support the small business. So now that I've been open to that, I could go in the supermarket for a select few things. I would personally go in the supermarket knowing I can get everything in the supermarket I want, but only go for a select few things to then support the Barbadian, to then support the small business, because I feel that that's important for our economy. It's important for our growth. It's important for Barbadians to keep the country afloat, to keep the economy moving. And I know we've been faced with a lot of challenges financially, or economically in Barbados as well too, prior to the pandemic. And this is now has really, I guess, set us back in a huge way. So it's very, very important that Barbadians spend money in Barbados. You know, I think we should spend money in Barbados first, which is why I now understand how important it is for me to go down to the corner shop and buy from a mini mart as opposed to maybe going to Massy. You know, which is why I find it important to go and support a local fisherman rather than going in Massy and buy fish. It could be cheaper, but at the end of the day, you get more quality and you're helping somebody else. And I guess I'm a really, really blessed individual. I keep saying it, I can't take it for granted, but I believe in spreading wealth. You know, and what those few Instagram lives has taught me, especially about small businesses, is that we could come together a lot more. You know, we could come together a lot more to become a lot stronger. I think the issue that we have as Barbadians, and I would say West Indians by extension, people try to do it on their own. You know, and I guess sport has taught me, and especially a team sport has taught me, that there's no individuals. And even in individual sports, when you sit down and think of it, it's nothing individual. You have your physios, you have your coaches, you have support staff that you may travel with, people that you need to lean on for their help. And that is the collective. And I think if we as Barbadians think a lot more of that, which is why I see happening now. And I guess, as I say, it takes a bit of, I don't know if to class the pandemic as a failure and such, but it takes something as drastic as the pandemic happening to really show Bajans what we have, what we can have, what we can better ourselves to become. So
I was dying to tell you the pun, which is no man is an island. There's a lot of puns in there. It says the same thing. Jason, this is my last question.
Sure. What
does cricket mean to Barbadians and Barbados?
Well, me as a cricketer and playing at Kensington Oval and hearing the amount of people that can be shouting at you, you can hear how passionate Barbadians are about their sport. And Barbadians love to win, you know, and cricket is arguably the biggest sport in Barbados. Obviously, we've had the event of track and field. Motorsport is very, very big in Barbados as well too. But more or less, cricket is a West Indian kind of I would say West Indian based-ish sport, you know. And you see the most consistent crowds mainly coming out in cricket. And cricket has brought the entertainment industry in Barbados a lot closer as well, because people have been able to host their events at Kensington Oval. We've been able to lend our expertise to them, lend our resources to them. They feed off of it. Likewise, in other sports in Barbados, you know, cricket is probably one of the most financially stable sport in Barbados, and they have been able to lend their resources to other sports, lend their facilities to other sports, and it's eased a lot of burden on many other different sports in Barbados. So I think cricket means a lot to Barbadians, and you could see, people always say when West Indies cricket is doing well, you know, people in the Caribbean are doing well as well too. So for me, that resonates with me, and that sits well. So I think that for us as cricketers, it's our duty to go out there and always, you know, play with pride and play with the people of the Caribbean in our minds. And I guess that transcends down to the people of Barbados.
Jason, your story is so special. Thanks for sharing it.
Thanks for having me.